Hi, everyone. It's Ryan Fowler here with my good friends, Jordan Kurtz and Tim Costello, Inner Game Group Live. We got a good one today. We're showing a clip from Bessel van der Kolk. It's a Big Think clip. He is the author of The Body Keeps the Score. It's been the #1 best-selling psychology book for like 8-9 years. And the mental health community is slowly waking up to childhood trauma. I don't know why it's taken them so long, but a lot of them have woken up. Most of them still don't know how to treat childhood trauma, psychological trauma effectively. And most have woken up, but there are many who have not woken up. Dr. Bessel, that's why this is such a bestseller, because it's becoming revolutionary, understanding that, trauma is trapped throughout your entire nervous system and all the dynamics of that. So today we're going to show how it triggers fight or flight response, how extremely common trauma is. Everyone actually has a little bit of psychological trauma, except for Tim, because you're like the most psychologically healthy person I've ever met, Tim. But yeah, let's dive in. And welcome to the show, guys. Introduce yourself, Jordan, and then Tim.
Hello, I'm Jordan Kurtz with Jordan Kurtz Hypnosis. I help you find and identify your limiting beliefs within your subconscious and remove them, and we replace them with healthy ones so that you can chase whatever matters most in your life to you.
Okay.
Excellent. And I'm Tim Costello with Tim Costello Hypnosis. And just so you know a little bit about hypnosis and what all of us do, if you were an artist, you could use watercolors or paint, oil paints, or you could use wood, or you could use clay, that type of stuff. Hypnosis is just the thing we use to help achieve the highest level of super neuroplasticity. It's like using watercolors or inks. It's just the thing we use. You can do it without it, but it's much more effective with it, which I'm saying reaches the highest levels of super neuroplasticity. And what is super neuroplasticity? It is the ability to rewire your subconscious to get rid of the programs that Jordan just talked about, the maladaptive programs that do not serve you and hold you back. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, so we're going to take a look at subconscious trauma today. And to a great degree, the super neuroplasticity that Tim has mentioned can be used to rapidly wire a lot of trauma out. Now, our psyche's vast. We tend to get the most trauma out first. You may have context-specific traumas get cleared later. So we'll talk about that later. We'll play the clip first and then take it from there. But it's a very effective tool. Now, none of us are medical practitioners. So if someone comes to us and says, well, I have, borderline personality disorder, manic depression, or psychological order, we don't really make any claims to treat that. But people come to us, they're anxious, they have insecurities, they don't feel good enough, they don't believe in their ability and value. We can rapidly fix that. And a lot of psychological trauma gets people to feel that way or feeling unsafe, any of that. And we rapidly get that out. We're trying to make everyone more aware that these methods are out there. Super neuroplasticity is real. Dr. Andrew Huberman's talked about it, and it's the most effective treatment I've seen, although in some ways psychedelics may rival that. But anyways, welcome to the show, Miguel, and let's dive in and play the clip, and then we'll get going. And by the way, you see down in the banner now, we have a free community, free ebook on how your subconscious mind works, free 5-part course on self-hypnosis. You can actually try and get the benefits of self-hypnosis and get rid of your own insecurities, replace it with authentic confidence, authentic deep core subconscious belief in your ability and value. People are already doing that, massively up-leveling, not even charging for the basic program. There's more advanced paid programs, but that one's free and it's powerful. So we're going to dive in now with this clip. Very interesting clip. Here we go. And this guy, he's world recognized internationally for sure for what he does. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, a #1 best-selling author.
The most important thing to know is that there's a difference between trauma and stress. As I like to say to people, life sucks a good amount of the time. We all have jobs and situations that are really unpleasant. But the moment that the situation is over, it's over. The problem with trauma is that when it's over, your body continues to relive it. My name is Bessel van der Kolk. I'm a psychiatrist, neuroscientist, and author of the book, The Body Keeps the Score. I got interested in trauma on my first day working at the Veterans Administration. 1978 was the year, and the Vietnam War was over by about 6 or 7 years. The very first day that I met Vietnam veterans, I was just blown away. These were guys who were my age, who were clearly smart and competent and athletic, and they clearly were just a shadow of their former self. Their bodies were clearly affected by trauma, and they had a very hard time connecting with new people after the war. Around that time, a group of us started to define what trauma is. And in the definition of PTSD, we write, these people have been exposed to an extraordinary event that's outside of normal human experience. In retrospect, that shows us how ignorant and narrow-minded we were.
Okay, I'm going to comment right there. So that was 1978. That book you saw was a DSM-3. They're now on the DSM-5. It's the diagnostic manual for psychiatrists. Psychologists use it as well. And in 1978, that's when the mental health community barely became aware of how trauma affects us. And it started with war veterans. And back then, PTSD. And back then, they didn't think most people had trauma. And he just said how ignorant we were. You guys have any comments on that? How common is trauma?
Go, Jordan, then I'll take it up.
Well, I thought it was interesting that because his experience starts from him working in the VA, right?
Yeah.
So he didn't go in. All of his, these come from observations. He didn't go in with the assumption that the body keeps the score, literally.
No,
because
that's his latest research in the last years.
But he observed that trauma was stored in the body through, through working with all of these people in the VA, and and witnessing, because he also talks about some of his treatment as well. But I think, because I've read some other videos about people, they're skeptical whether or not the body the body doesn't really store trauma. That's just that's
your nervous system does throughout the body. Yeah.
Right. And I think that that's a very basic concept that is kind of it's almost so basic that it's fundamental to everything we do with our hypnosis work. It's fundamental to it. And so if you don't understand that basic fact, this is like hypnosis 101 for us right now. It's like our bodies store trauma, and that's why every time we interact with clients, we ask them, where and how do you feel this in your body? And it's largely, it's based on a lot of the principles that he talks about in his book. So go ahead.
And it's actually a key to superneuroplasticity, because Dr. Andrew Huberman, world famous Stanford professor, neuroscientist, one of the top neuroscientists in the world, in one of the top universities in neuroscience and psychology in the world, talks about how you actually need to focus on what part of your brain you need to rewire in order to rewire it quickly and rapidly. And so when we get people to focus on their body, they're actually focusing on where psychological trauma is stored so we can get rid of it.
So let's take that and let me submit this, that the reason the body stores the trauma in its nervous system is to allow it to protect you. It gives warning signs. It gives warning signals that something that you've experienced before is starting to match a pattern that is stored in your subconscious. And now your subconscious triggers after that pattern to give you a feeling in your body that says, this is not good. This thing that's coming along that I'm noticing got you hurt before. And I want to warn you to get you to stay away from that thing right now.
Yeah.
Those patterns are generally developed before we really know what's going on in the world, and they're very survival instinct based. So
there is a big section on survival coming up, just so you know, Tim.
Absolutely. And what he's noticing is that, and he mentioned this in his book as he learned more and more, that people presented at the hospital that he worked at in a number of locations that had zero medical evidence that would lead them to their trauma or their pain. Like he mentioned, a girl with a migraine headache. There's absolutely no physiological reason that she should have this migraine headache. And he started deducing that something else is going on. And that's where they come up with this. Remember, he's looking back to 1978 with the knowledge of 2021, right? Yeah. So it's always a little bit capsulated in some information. But back then they didn't know. They said, hey, these soldiers coming back from war are experiencing these tremendously tragic events, things they see, things they experience, and that has significantly rewired their subconscious for tremendous survival because they're in a very bad zone. So that allows them to now, having rewired at a very late age, and something that emotional happened to them that allowed them to rewire their brains to warn them of that thing. And that's what he's talking about was, we've noticed these people who are experiencing things outside. And right here it says the usual human experience, which means many of us are not in war zones. Well, sometimes, as Ryan will attest to, his homebound life as a kid was a war zone. And
psychologically,
psychologically, it was
I physically unsafe? No, I was physically safe.
Correct. But he was now generating those subconscious programs that would not serve him for a long time until he rewired his subconscious and got rid of that trauma. So again, trauma is not the thing that happens to you. It's the thing that you feel about what happens to you. And I think Bessel van der Kolk has learned that over a while as well.
The feeling and the subconscious beliefs that form. Yeah, that's absolutely right. So the reason I stopped the video at this point is Dr. van der Kolk says, we thought it was just like war vets, people who had unusually traumatic experiences, how ignorant we were. The reason I stopped there is he has since learned that psychological trauma is extremely common in our society. Now, I have some comments on that, but how common do you think psychological trauma is? Or do you just want me to go?
Well, I can comment on it.
Tremendously common. More common than you think.
Yeah.
Well, I think people, that word trauma, I think, is sometimes misused because it's people will often, they wonder, there's a lot of weight to that word. They assume they have to have gone through something that's particularly traumatic to have, these negative subconscious programs. And that's just not the case. And so, because so many people have experienced trauma, but aren't traumatized from it. You can, and he's going to go into that in the video. If if you're little and you get attacked by a dog or something, that experience might be traumatic, but if you have a support system around you, after that, you may recover fully, and you you don't get your subconscious isn't programmed going forward with those maladaptive beliefs. And so it's like Tim said, it's the interpretation of the event. And so, but everyone has interpretations of different events. So is everyone necessarily traumatized? No, but most people have at one point in their life interpreted an event in a maladaptive way.
Yeah. So let me mention some of the very, very, very common symptoms of trauma. Number one, procrastination. Now, I would say a little bit of procrastination sometimes is pretty normal. I'm talking about a little. Talking about when you're really tired, you just don't want to do it, or there is legitimate, threat tied to something, or you genuinely hate a certain task. But any procrastination on top of that is actually tied to trauma. It's tied to as a child, I messed stuff up. I got laughed at. I got punished by my parents, et cetera, et cetera. So anything I could fail at, there's pain tied to it. I'm going to put it off. And it's on a spectrum. 95% of people have procrastination issues. There was a research done at a university. I forget the university. I've addressed it in the past. They surveyed a few hundred of their students, found out 90% were at least mildly codependent. Codependence is an adaptation to psychological childhood trauma. Another university did a study also of a few hundred of its students, found out 50% were moderately to severely codependent. Codependency is a coping mechanism to psychological trauma. So 50% moderate or severely codependent. There was this other lady also on Big Think. We analyzed her clip, found out 60% of college students at some point were overwhelmed with anxiety and found it difficult to function. Guys, welcome to the show. P-Dubs, welcome to the show. Loyal guests and followers. Welcome, and my Miguel. Man, Mike Harton had really high anxiety, was gracious enough to post a video testimonial in the video section, and the free program fixed his approach anxiety. By the way, we also have a paid program with twice a month coaching for a year, in addition to 200 hours of video training, 4 self-hypnosis audios, written materials that actually specifically helps men with anxiety approaching women with every aspect of the dating process: anxiety, insecurity, lack of confidence. We have a paid program to fix that with twice a month coaching. You're not going to need to come twice a month for a year, but we offer that because usually what happens, guys, a lot of anxiety approaching women. If you're a man, your anxiety is approaching a woman is, I'd say 5 out of 10 or more, there's trauma there. And if you just, let's say you never approach a woman at all, and all of a sudden you're approaching, maybe the first few times, 8 out of 10, 6 out of 10, you just never, ever, ever done it at all. If it doesn't quickly go down to below 5 out of 10, like 3 out of 10, 4, after like 10 approaches, you have trauma. Just straight up and we fix it all the time. So Mike, for example, used to have very high trauma approaching women, took the course, no more trauma. So, it's down to what's normal, which is 2-3 out of 10. So,
by the way, Miguel was the first one in. He's been here for a while. How you doing, Miguel?
Yep, Miguel. Good morning, Miguel. Good morning, Mike. Good morning, P-Dubs, and all the other listeners. So, if you are a people pleaser, some people say the fight, flight, or freeze response. There's a fourth one called fawn, which is people pleasing. I'm not convinced it's tied to the fight or flight response, but it's definitely a survival program. If you're validation seeking, people pleasing, if you feel you have to manipulate others in order to get what you want, if you're passive aggressive, all this stuff. If you drink a little too much, you engage in certain addictions. I do think addiction is so common that you maybe not a straight up addiction, but a bad habit. I think that can just happen because it's just so freaking pervasive in our society. But what else is extremely pervasive is a lot of toxic culture, toxic messages, toxic parenting. And again, 90% of people at least mildly codependent. Codependence is a trauma response. So if you know your anxiety is higher than is normal, if you know you're procrastinating more than is normal, if you feel insecure, if you have low self-esteem, all of these things, the number one root cause is childhood psychological trauma. Now, people who have the worst trauma, we did one of our first shows. We did a clip where the head of a medical clinic on psychological trauma, they did a study of like 11,000 or 17,000 people, and they had a criteria of 10 or 11 things that indicates childhood trauma. And they said one in 9 of just random samples they interviewed had at least half of those things. These were big things like an alcoholic parent, a parent in jail, a parent not there, physical abuse, sexual abuse, all these indicators. And they found out 1 in 9 people had at least half of these indicators. And those people, their lifespan was 20 years shorter than normal. So that's talking extreme trauma is 1 in 9 in our society. It's not Ramaswamy, it's Rawat. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, out of in university. Yeah, the lady. It's I want to say Raswamy, but I know I'm slaughtering her name. But those who know who I'm talking about. One of the top authorities in the world on narcissistic personality disorder says 1 in 6 adults have strong narcissistic traits. 1 in 10 full-blown narcissistic personality disorder. That's not including sociopathy or borderline or other cluster B. That's just narcissistic personality disorder. So we have a society that is rampant with trauma and people struggling. So all these things we're talking about, 90% plus chance you can improve your life by getting, now again, it's on a spectrum. Maybe your trauma is moderate. Your average person has moderate psychological trauma. It's a bell curve. There's a few people like Tim who have very little trauma because he had a great childhood overall. And then there's, people like me who had a really rough childhood. And then there's a lot of people in the middle. So chances are you have at least some psychological trauma. And when you clear that out, your natural authenticity, like if you have imposter syndrome, it's all trauma. It's all a trauma response, coping with trauma. So you can get rid of that, and you then become a naturally confident, authentic person, high self-belief, self-efficacy, believing in your intrinsic ability and value, and then you take off. It wasn't a coincidence. Within 2 years of finding this 12 years ago, my income doubled. I wasn't even trying. And I then tried and doubled it again. Now, that's not the only measure of the improvements. My dating life just way took off when I healed all the trauma with that. I had about 6 traumas tied to that. So, and our subconscious mind, you can Google it right now. What percent of our behavior is determined by our subconscious? 90 to 95%. Just Google it. So you fix this stuff, your life will up level unbelievably. And we know how to do it. And we have a program you can try and do it for free. But if you're struggling with dating, approach anxiety, we have an even more in-depth program for that. And that's in the bottom ticker as well. So very, very, very common. And this is why Dr. Vanderkolk said how ignorant we were, only thinking war vets had psychological trauma. It's actually extremely common. And the majority of people listening to this have some trauma, maybe not tons, but enough where it's holding you back significantly, and a lot of people don't even realize it. Anything to add before we move on, guys?
Yeah, I'll comment off of one thing you said. So you talked about the statistics of how many people have narcissistic traits versus narcissistic personality disorder. And then if you go one step further, think about how many of those people are also parents who then
Screw up
pass
their
on
kids.
those things to their kids. And
Yeah,
so
or
it's
the
not
divorce
just,
rate, or just
right.
good grief.
And so, because a lot of times our parents have typically have the most impact on us when we're young, because they're basically gods. And so it's just because just being around one of those people with narcissism can also create for yourself, those maladaptive subconscious programs. So that's how pervasive it is just because you aren't NPD doesn't mean that you haven't been affected by somebody with NPD.
Yeah,
Yep.
100%.
Just
It's Dr.
things.
Ramani, not Dr.
Yeah,
Ramaswamy.
Dr. Ramani.
That's what I said. I
That's
thought.
one of my
Thinking
two
about that,
things.
Dr. Ramani. Okay. Yeah. I
Yeah.
looked
Yeah,
at
not Ramaswamy.
I don't
That's
know
what
why I do that.
So
but
the only thing I have to add to that is Ryan mentioned in the beginning, when you have procrastination that is beyond what is normal, if you have that, you may not know what is normal and you may not realize what's going on. But if you're not getting the things you think you should have, that's an indicator. If you're not progressing in your career like you think you should, that's an indicator. If you're not progressing socially like you think you should, that's an indicator. And all that we do is remove the roadblocks so the true, authentic self comes out that you are. That's it. It's that simple.
And we do put in programs that show you that the true, authentic you is the best part of you, that you have massive inherent value just for who you are, that the more we practice anything, failure doesn't affect our value. Failure is learning and growing. The more we practice, the better we get until we get the skill to get what we want and go for what you want, not what other people say you should want. Of course, don't eat paint. If you're like, well, I want cocaine, it's like, well, what do you really want? You're taking cocaine to get something. Can you get it without cocaine? Yeah, abso-freaking-lutely you can. And that's a lot of people, drug addicts, alcohol addicts, social media addicts, video game addicts, because they're covering up the pain that's in their subconscious that they would feel if they don't engage in that. So what do you really want? You want to get rid of that pain and then have the confidence to engage in healthy activities that get you what you really want: relationships, career, family, travel the world, whatever. So we're talking about what you really want, not what is a Band-Aid to cover your pain, just so you know. Correct. So, and that's the problem with addictions is most people, sooner or later, they're like, I don't want this addiction. This is really screwing up my life. So we're not, when we say go after what you want, we're talking about what you really want without crappy bad side effects that make you feel horrible. All right. So back to the clip here. Good comments all. And here we go.
Because it turned out that this is not an unusual experience at all. People usually think about the military when they talk about trauma. But at least 1 out of 8 kids in America witness physical violence between their parents. A larger number of kids get beaten very hard by their own caregivers. A very large number of people in general, but women in particular, have sexual experiences that were clearly unwanted and that left them confused and enraged. So, unlike what we first thought, trauma is actually extremely common. There's a lot of debate of what a trauma is to this day. But basically, trauma is something that happens to you that makes you so upset that it overwhelms you. There is nothing you can do to stave off the inevitable. You basically collapse in a state of confusion, maybe rage, because you are unable to function in the face of this particular threat.
Mentioned rage there. That's interesting.
But the trauma is not the event that happens. The trauma is how you respond to it.
That's it.
It's how you respond to it, and it is it's a subconscious program that develops in response to trauma. So the subconscious programs that affect us the most, especially ones tied to trauma, they are feelings tied to beliefs. My dad hit me. What does that mean? Oh, it means I'm no good. And for example, if you form that belief, there's going to be a very painful feeling tied to it. And then later in life, anytime there's anything in the outside world that suggests you're no good, that pain is spiked. And then we do all these coping mechanisms that are maladaptive. Maybe you are a sociopath because of that. And your sociopathy comes out. or you get what's called a narcissistic wound if you're a narcissist, and then you go into a rage and you got to get revenge on that person, even if that person said something very minor and inadvertently offended you, but it's a really deep wound for you because of your trauma or codependent, all this other stuff, addiction, something triggers you, and so you just go back to the bottle and you just get blackout drunk. It's all trauma. Or you're afraid that trauma in you could get triggered, and that's why you procrastinate. Hey, I have a task to do, but man, if I screw up, my boss is going to yell at me in front of everyone like he did last time, and I'm going to feel horrible. So now your brain's like, avoid the task. Don't do the task. There's pain here. It's all trauma response. It's the beliefs in childhood that form, get lodged in our subconscious, and have all this pain tied to it. That is the root of trauma, what he's talking about.
Now, let me throw something down on that as well.
Sure.
That he said how you respond is the actual trauma. Realize you may not actually be cognitively aware of how you are responding, but your subconscious is certainly keeping score and is trying to figure things out to protect you. And it may not do it in the best way, especially when you're young.
Yeah. And next time you get triggered, pause and ask yourself, where am I feeling this in my body? Oh, I feel it in my chest. I'm very anxious in my stomach. I'm angry and I feel something in my fists or in my head, my neck, back, wherever. That is where in your nervous system the trauma is stored. And that's why he calls his best-selling book, I think it's the #1 book in psychology for like 8 freaking years. Unbelievable. He calls it The Body Keeps the Score, because it's our entire, and we actually have at least 4 different brains. Our immune system is called our floating brain. We have our second brain in our stomach, and there's called the little brain on our heart. 40,000 neurons processing data, brain cells on our heart. So, and throughout our body, there's just as many nerves and neurons in our torso as there is up here, actually processing data. Not just nerves, but actually neurons processing data. Just as many in our torso as up here. Go ahead, guys.
And the only thing to add to Ryan is that we don't get to choose what that interpretation is always.
Correct.
Like that, it happens without.
It happens when you're 3 years old, or 1, or 8, or 12.
Right. It's usually around
interpretation.
Whatever that interpretation is usually around whatever's going to keep you the most safe, and it depends on how you feel at the time. So you can have identical twins that experience the same event, the same quote traumatizing event, and only one of the twins ends up having maladaptive subconscious programs associated with it. So I kind of like people like Alex Hormozi like to say things like, oh, you can just choose to interpret your trauma differently. It's like, well, you can, but that doesn't mean, just because you're cognitively thinking about your trauma differently doesn't mean that your subconscious is doing the same thing.
Correct.
Yeah, Alex is a genius businessman, amazing businessman, and an absolute horrible psychologist. But hey, it's all good, man. I mean, he's a way better businessman than I am. He's a
I don't know, but I would say he's a horrible psycholist.
He has some major flaws in his thinking.
He has some good ideas.
He has no training in psychology.
Actually, that's true. He does have some in certain ways some good mindset.
Oh yeah.
Ideas. That is true. I'll revise that to say he has some major falsehoods and defects in his thoughts on psychology and how the human brain works.
Yeah. I mean, his wife posted on Twitter, like you don't get better. You don't ever feel better. You just get better at feeling bad. Like, so. Yeah.
So she's admitting they have all this money and she still feels bad inside. That can be fixed. I could probably fix that. 80% of my clients only need 1 or 2 sessions and all their major stuff is fixed.
Yep.
And if you guys doubt me, go to the video section of this YouTube channel, start watching those testimonials. I got another 5 to put up, video interviews, and I have like 10 audio and then like 30 written, but there's like 30 video interviews right now. One of the guys on there is worth $100 million plus. somewhere over that. Has his own TED Talk, published author, holds an annual event at MIT. Rick Sapio, watch his interview or any of the other interviews. This is the real deal.
Or are we going to comment on Carrie's comment?
Yeah, Tim, I'll let you. How do you think trauma affected Carrie, and what did we do for her?
Well, Carrie grew up in a seemingly tremendously wonderful home. The money was there. The seeming love was there. All the trappings of wealth, etc., because her dad was a multimillionaire. He did very well in business, not in the beginning, but as he got on in life, he did very well. Belonged to some great golf clubs and everything else. But her mom, you know, I'm no psychologist, so I can't diagnose, but I would say her mom had tremendous narcissistic traits. And her dad was tremendously codependent into that relationship because of the abuse he had growing up, which he described many times, but I never recognized till years later. So that affected Carrie because she never felt good enough. She never felt as though she could achieve what she wanted to. Many times, and she's told me this now, but many times in the past, she said, Tim, when I got into that multi-level marketing company, it might have been Pampered Chef, it might have been whatever. She says, I could see myself on stage accepting the award and, you know, making all this money and stuff like that. And I 100% supported it. I'm like, you go for it. But she would get the kit. She'd pay the money. She'd become a distributor. She'd line it all up, get the clipboards made. Literally, we'd spend $100 beyond the kit to get ready for the first party.
Because that's what she wanted. She wanted all this stuff really bad.
The first party never happened. So 20 to 30 times over 40 years of marriage, she attempted this. And I always thought, I'm like, what's stopping you? Go for it. I mean, I can't figure it out, right?
Yeah, because you had a healthy childhood. You're like, what's going on here?
Yeah, just go do it. I support it. Have fun, you know, that kind of thing. And then after she had her session with Ryan in September of 22, I was in Germany. One session. And she was at Walmart making, when she was an assistant manager, probably $50,000 a year. She'd made as much as $65,000 a year in some jobs, kind of thing. But again, her own inadequacies of psychological underpinnings kept her from progressing where she wanted. And she fought with those who were narcissistic because she couldn't handle it. It didn't work with her well.
She was smart, and is smart and competent, but had stuff holding her back.
Correct. Never an incompetent person, never an unintelligent woman, just not a woman with a lot of self-confidence.
And a darn nice lady, by the way.
And a darn nice lady. I agree. Yeah. So she had a session with Ryan in September of 22. I had become a hypnotist at that point, very unexperienced at that point.
Yeah.
And I was not the person. You can't do your relative like that. You can't do your wife. You can't.
Yeah, she probably wouldn't open up. Possibly.
Right. You need someone else to really get naked with.
Yeah.
That's a bad term, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Psychologically speaking. And after that session, something changed because a few months later, she started this little business she's got now called Leopard Leather Works, of which I am the engine and she is the conductor. And she has nearly at this point, certainly tripled, nearly quadrupled the money that she brought in from just being a regular worker for a company kind of thing. And it's not the end. She's literally just getting started. It's a year and a half company.
You're like hockey sticking. You're like, take off.
It is just, it's moving into the future. So thanks
20,
to
30
Ryan,
times tried and failed or just couldn't do it. Got held back. Kicking major ass now. Amazing.
Yeah, now she's kicking my ass.
She's working you. She's working you to the bone, man. I'm like, get employed. But I know it's hard to find someone quality and then train them. I know that's difficult.
Yep. Anyway, so that's what Carrie's response was there is when she tried to, even though she pictured herself on stage, when she really came down dollars to donuts and make it happen, she remembered her dad saying, got to do it this way. Got to do it this way. You're not good enough. Can't do it that way. I mean, just tremendous, constant you need to be like this. When she deep down inside was good enough, but they didn't feel she was good enough because they said, you got to do it like this. You got to dress like this. You got to wear these socks. Got to wear this dress. Got to act like this. Talk like this. You know, all that country club
And if you don't,
garbage.
there's pain.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Excellent. So that is an example of psychological childhood trauma. So if you guys are struggling, even not struggling anywhere near that degree, but you're like, man, something's in me that's holding me back, these limiting beliefs, we fix it. We fix it rapidly. There's maybe 5% we can't help. Everyone else can be helped.
One of the largest mitigating factors against getting traumatized is who is there for you at that particular time. When, as a kid, you get bitten by a dog, it's really very scary and very nasty. But if your parents pick you up and say, oh, I see that you're really in bad shape, let me help you, that dog bite doesn't become a big issue because the foundation of your safety has not been destroyed. We are profoundly interdependent people. And as long as our relationships are intact,
real quick, Ryan.
By and large, we're pretty.
Hang on, Ryan. There you go.
Real quick. So we talked about interpretation, right? And so the kid's interpretation is that even if something bad happens, I'll still be okay. That's right. The interpretation they got from that because the parent was supportive.
Yeah.
And that becomes the subconscious program. And that's healthy.
This is actually very important. Yeah.
Because life is chaotic. Bad things are going to happen that you can't predict. But if your subconscious program is no matter what happens, I'll be okay, I'll get through it, then you become very resilient. And that's very healthy response. And so the parents help facilitate that positive subconscious belief.
Yeah, no, on the alternate, the reason I said this is actually quite important is here's the flip side. What if you feel no one has your back? What if you're like, mom and dad blow up all the time? They criticize me no matter what I do. I go to school, I get bullied, etc., etc. So I don't feel safe anywhere. Or maybe your parents are okay, but at school you get incessantly bullied and you're a loner at school. So in that school setting, you're like, I'm all alone. No one has my back and there's predators out there. That will cause some pretty significant childhood trauma. Or maybe you have a few friends at school, but then you come home and the family situation's hostile. And you don't have your mom. Now, all children instinctively know we need our mom and dad to survive. So we idealize them. We need to believe that they're wise, powerful, strong, that they're able to take care of us. This is like ancient evolutionary psychology. This is hardwired into everyone, but we also need to feel that my mom and dad want me, love me, value me. If the parents neglect the child, treat the child like a burden, criticize the child, or only conditionally love the child, oh, you're not doing what I want. Okay, well, I'm going to completely ignore you now. All of these things, if you feel as a child, man, I can't rely on my mom or dad, or even worse, they're dangerous, or I'm not good enough for them. Same thing in school. You get bullied all the time. Man, everyone's against me. That is a child who really can have some severe trauma. That was my upbringing. I had CPTSD. I had general anxiety disorder. I trapped resentment and rage, and I had very bad depression with mild manias, bipolar type 2. I was actually diagnosed extreme bipolar type 2 depression. They put me on all this antidepressants, all this other stuff, 15 years of therapy, 100 sessions on and off. It did fix about 60% of my depression. Really didn't touch much of anything else. Maybe got my anger down a tiny bit. And then I found this stuff 12 years ago, and within 2 months, just massive change. It fixed a whole bunch of stuff very rapidly that 15 years of therapy couldn't touch. And so, so if you have someone on your side growing up and you know that, you tend to do way better. You can still get traumatized, but tend to do way better. But it's these kids who feel they have no one on their side that can be very problematic later on in life.
Yeah.
So We'll keep going, or anything to add, Tim?
Nope, I'm ready to roll.
Rock and roll.
Good with trauma is subjective experience, and what may be traumatic for you may not be traumatic for me, depending on our personality and our prior experiences. The problem with trauma is that it starts off with something that happens to us, but that's not where it stops, because it changes your brain. Much of the imprint of trauma is in that very primitive survival part of your brain that I like to call the cockroach brain. There's a part of you that just picks up what's dangerous and what's safe. And when you're traumatized, that little part of your brain, which is usually very quiet, continues to just send messages. I'm in danger. I'm not safe. That event itself is over, but you continue to react to things as if you're in danger. We're talking about survival. We're talking about staying alive. And so some people are into fight flight, or on a more primitive level, people's brain shuts down and they collapse. You have these automatic responses that are not a product of your cognitive assessment, they're a product of your animal brain trying to stay alive in the face of something that part of your brain interprets as a life threat.
So animal brain.
And the problem then becomes...
And the word we like to use is the subconscious mind. Yeah. But that's... Do we see how it's like...
There's subcategories of the subconscious. There's the subconscious programs that are learned in childhood, and then there's instinct, which is also subconscious. So our fight, flight, freeze, some may say also fawn response, that is all instinct, but it is triggered by subconscious programs. And they get lodged in us.
And the word he uses...
I can explain how, but I'll let you keep going.
Well, my point was, he said the key thing I think he said there was it's not cognitive, it's automatic. It's not something you think about. Your brain automatically reacts to that because you have those. It's running in your subconscious in the background.
Yep, it happens whether you think about it or not. And even if you do think about it, it still happens. Although you get some control consciously when you think about it. So let me go into there's 5 types of subconscious trauma. Every single one is tied to survival. First one, I'm not good enough. Number 2, I don't belong or fit in. Number 3, I can't get what I want. Number 4, trapped anger, resentment, rage, where it just comes up over and over. You're still mad at your dad who died 10 years ago, etc. Or someone from childhood, a bully or parent, whatever, or a class of people. You know, you're angry at women, women angry at men, misandry / misogyny, etc. Number 5, I don't feel safe. Well, some people are like, they only think I don't feel safe is the only survival thing. No, all 5. So I'm not good enough, for example, means at its core, it's my mom or dad may leave me, because if I'm not good enough, they don't want me or love me, they may abandon me. I mean, this stuff is learned in childhood, where at an instinctual level, we know we need our mom and dad to love us, because if they don't, they might abandon us. And then as a kid, we can't support ourselves, we die. So I'm not good enough is tied to that. I don't belong or fit in. That means the tribe might kick me out or not give me resources. Number 3, I can't get what I want. Well, if I can't get what I want, I might not die. I might die. I might not get the resources or mating opportunities or relationships that are, imperative to raising children and, survival, passing on my genetics. Trapped rage, anger, resentment is the fight part of fight or flight. It only gets triggered when we think there's a threat and we go to the fight response or survival response. And then number 5, I'm not safe. So all of these are tied to survival, even if, fitting in the tribe, parents taking care of us, getting what we need to survive and procreate. I mean, all of it. It's all tied to survival. And so these powerful programs in our limbic system can get triggered. And we have a very anxious, procrastination-ridden, addicted society as a result.
Yep.
Because of all these, and it's our brain, which was optimized for hunter-gatherer times, now being in this environment where it's just hyper-stimulation all the time, all over the place, and it's not evolved for that. And man, we can navigate it quite well, except when there's trauma, and that's kicking up these survival responses that are not optimal for our current society, and it causes massive problems. Anything to add, guys?
Nope.
Okay.
It's good. We can keep going. We might actually finish a video today.
Maybe.
Right. Yeah. We're actually trying to let him go a minute or two before commenting instead of every 30 seconds. So
that you are not able to engage or to learn or to see other people's point of view or to coordinate your feelings with your thinking. Traumatized people have a tremendous problem experiencing pleasure and joy. But the core issue is our hormones and our physiological impulses that have to do with survival. Your body keeps mobilizing itself to fight. You have all kinds of immunological abnormalities, endocrine abnormalities, and that really devastates your physical health also. Oftentimes the physical problems are longer lasting than the mental problems.
Well,
And the other thing that is terribly important is the
He said, hang on. He said the physical problems are often last longer than the mental problems. I think he
said that backwards.
Yeah,
I spoke on that one.
I think what he meant was your mind is still replaying the event. Wait,
I'm not sure exactly what he meant.
I think what he meant was just because the event is over doesn't mean your body's not still replaying it. But I think
it'll replay it the rest of your life with many types of trauma, your entire life, unless you fix it. Yeah.
I got that. I was like, wait a second. That's not. It's kind of
tough. I think what he was meaning there, because in reality, in the totality, the mental trauma lasts a lot longer than any physical trauma to our body. But that same mental trauma causes that long-lasting physical degradation of our bodies.
Yeah, this is why people with a lot of trauma on average die 20 years sooner. They end up having all of these diseases come out, which is a response to inflammation, and the inflammation is caused by trauma stored in their body.
Like, for example, if I'm in a car wreck and I break my arm or something like that, my arm is going to heal physically, but I may still have the mental. He just worded that kind of poorly. Like, the whole point is that mentally your body's going to remember what that is, but physically, like if I broke my arm in a car wreck, my arm would heal eventually.
And then the trauma lasts much longer. He might have accidentally said it backwards.
There's probably very little trauma, how you feel about a particular situation from an accident that broke your arm than somebody mentally abusing you as a child. Right. That trauma is going to last forever, where the physical trauma will heal in your broken arm. And you'll remember that broken arm and that accident and stuff, but it won't be a traumatic event subconsciously.
Yeah, I think he accidentally misspoke, because he's talking about these war vets who in 1978, the war had been over for 4 years. And they are still, hold on, you can go next. These war veterans, shell-shocked, psychologically messed up 4 years after the war.
Yep.
After they're complete, and that's the end of the war. Some of them came home before that. So I think he accidentally did say it backwards, just to, But maybe he's talking about something and we just don't understand it. Skinny just swole. Procrastination so bad you may procrastinate using the self-hypnosis program. So, hey, you can get a free 20-minute consult with me and we'll talk about it. And, you know, oftentimes it goes 30 minutes. So in the description at the bottom of this YouTube video, it has a link. I won't charge to talk to you 20, 30 minutes, and we'll see what we can do for you, my man. Fix it, because that's the same problem Carrie had. One session fixed it, and then her life changed. Her income tripled, quadrupled, and it's still going up because now she's going after what she's wants. She's not held back. And I've done that for hundreds of people. And so have Jordan and Tim have done quite a few sessions and helped quite a few people permanently as well. Go ahead, Jordan.
I'm not quite at 100, but I'm getting there, climbing there.
Yeah.
So skinny to swole, so you're not the first. Actually, many clients we've worked with have had the same issue. We've
very common.
They're like, we don't want. I don't like. They've watched our show. Actually, Mike Harton is actually an example. I think I can say him publicly because he's talked to you.
He has a testimonial on.
Yeah. So I met him in person, and we talked about this, and he's like, I was like, I've been watching your show for months. I really like it, but I'm procrastinating on doing the self-hypnosis. And I said, well, why are you procrastinating? He's like, well, I'm worried that if I go through the process of doing the session, I might not like what I find. And so what you're really procrastinating is you don't want to feel those negative emotions in the hypnosis session. You're avoiding pain. You're procrastinating. At the end of the day, you're procrastinating because you're avoiding the pain. And what you have to have is a little bit of confidence or faith that you can go through the process. It's going to be painful, but at the end of it, you will feel better because you'll release that pain permanently. And so all you need is that a little bit of that conscious effort and energy to get over that hump, to get that out and release it. And you'll go, because immediately right after you do it, you're going to go, why didn't I do this sooner? I've been carrying around all this crap for years.
But you can only
we are talking from experience.
Is gone. You can't say it beforehand. You can only say it afterwards. Now, let me give an example. I've got a client. We did a session. He is rocking and rolling now, moving forward, getting their feet back underneath them, starting to earn income again, that kind of stuff. And he knows he needs more sessions, but he goes, I don't want to go there because I'm doing so well right now. I don't want to dig into that stuff, but he will eventually. And the same thing for you too, Skinny, is that the hardest part is the first step. It is 100 feet tall, and all the rest of the steps are 6 inches. But that first step of doing the dive to the 5 and going through the descriptive word list and starting to dig into why you do the things you do and what the trauma might be is the hardest part. So you're not alone. You're not different. You're not unique. You're right there with everybody else. That is the hard part. Keep going, keep digging. And if you want help, Ryan, me, Jordan, we're all there, etc.
Yeah. Now, some people do. I've had people come to me and they're like, I booked a session with you because I know I'm not going to do it on my own. And I will say the most rapid and the deepest results are doing a one-on-one session, like magnitudes. Like the self-hypnosis program can be very powerful, but one-on-one is always we just fix way more in one session. And you get the customized guidance and support. And some people need that support. Now, with that said, I just lost my train of thought. I hate it when I do that.
Talking about the
self-hypnosis, getting started, one-on-one session.
Yeah. So try the free try the free program. For a lot of people it works. We actually in a one-on-one session train you on how to do self-hypnosis more. But let me tell you, I have felt this resistance, this exact same resistance. And when I was first healing, and I was like, why don't I want to go inside? Because I've already done this 3 or 4 times. I'm feeling way better. Why am I feeling this resistance now? And the answer that came to me was, well, what if I go inside and look at who I really am? We do all these things to cover our pain. You know, that's where all this addiction and just procrastination and playing video games, watching TV, all this stuff, eating comfort food, all this stuff to cover our pain. What if I go in and look at exactly who I am and I find out the core of who I am, nothing blocking it, no excuses. I'm really not good enough. I really am a piece of crap. What if I go inside and find that? That's what the resistance was for me, because I didn't want to risk finding out I really wasn't good enough, which is what my subconscious felt deep down. I promise you, you will never find that. You will never find that. What you find is a hurt, scared kid who needs love and support and needs someone to help him believe in his ability and value. Now, you can do it on your own with the audios, but it's my honor and pleasure to do it for people who come to me. And again, yeah, once you do it, like Tim said, you'll be like, why did I wait so long? I understand why people wait. They don't want to go inside and say, oh my goodness, what if I really am the piece of crap I suspect I am deep down? But you're not going to feel anything you haven't felt many times before. This stuff gets triggered all the time, which is why we engage in all these coping behaviors to get triggered less and to not feel it as bad when we do get triggered. It's been getting triggered all the time for decades. We're just going to trigger it one last time to get it out of you forever. So do what it takes. You'll be glad you did. We have a free program. Some people just can't, at least right now, just straight up can't afford a one-on-one. But hey, I'll talk to you free for 30 minutes. No problem. In the description, book it. At least start with that and we'll get you on your way. By the way, we do have a new school community. It's no longer Mind Chrysalis. It's now RyanFowlerSOS. So just look at the banner down there. Go and join. We have a webinar twice a month. So we got a webinar this Monday on connecting to your inner world and understanding what is in your subconscious, connecting to that. All right. So moving on. Anything to add, guys?
No, sir.
Okay. Yeah, we need to get through this, but we almost got to the end of the hour mark. So let's just keep going and finish it out.
Impact of poverty, or the impact of racism, or the impact of unemployment. There's other societies that are much more trauma savvy than we are, where there is not an enormous amount of income inequality. Healthcare is universal, childcare is universal. A culture like that really looks at what are the antecedents for certain forms of pathology. So the big issue is a political issue. How do we rearrange our society to really know about trauma so that people who grow up under extreme adverse conditions can become full-fledged members of society? The sense of community and people being there for each other is a critical part of surviving and thriving.
Get smarter faster with new videos every week.
Okay. Any final words, guys?
Yeah, I mean, I don't agree that universal child care and health care.
Yeah, it's an example. It's not the way.
Yeah,
sort of. That's where he gets a little more political than he does.
Well, he's from the Netherlands, and that's how they have it in the Netherlands. So it's just different there.
Well, Netherlands, very wealthy country because of its oil. Yeah. Our American system of healthcare, which is extremely overregulated, the reason we spend twice as much on healthcare over anyone else is it's extremely overregulated. Doctors spend 1/3 to 2/3 of their time filling out freaking paperwork.
Yep.
And the insurance companies and all the crap they do, Medicaid, Medicare, and just the extreme bloat. I think 500 billion a year is estimated to be lost due to fraud for Medicaid.
We're not here to talk about that today.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about that. It's a messed up system.
My shot here for Bessel van de Kolk is that he has given us in less than 8 minutes about a semester-long course on what trauma is. He does a very good job of wrapping in a whole day's discussion into a phrase, and realize he has to do that for the video, obviously, to get you to read his book, etc. And it's a great book. I read it twice now. But the key is to know what trauma is and to know that you can clear the trauma and have it not bother you. It's that simple.
Yeah. The shocking thing is the standard conventional mental health community is still not 1/10 as effective as hypnotherapist Gil Boyne was back in the 1970s.
Yes, sir.
there, and I'm just like, pull your head out of your ass. The guys, the data is out there. My 4-part series on superneuroplasticity, there is a Stanford neuroscientist telling you can do this, and he's citing research article after or research study after research study saying this is established. It's actually a fundamental part of neuroscience, that you can rewire your brain very quickly, one sitting. And they're still figuring out exactly what trauma is, and they're just getting to the more effective therapies now in the mental health community. I mean, they are so freaking slow. It's like, come on, guys, just look at the stuff that's already been done, that's already been proven to work. Why don't you do that? But no, you know, we can't do something that someone can do for free in their own home and fix their entire life. They can't do that. I mean, it's pretty
No
ridiculous.
money in that.
There's no money in that. Yeah, there is a Soft White Underbelly. It's over 5 million subscribers. Watch that YouTube channel. They interviewed an insider, a science writer for the pharmaceutical industry, and the corruption there is absolutely staggering. Absolutely. And those are the guys funding the universities, and that's why the universities don't teach the most effective methods that don't fit into the profit model of big pharma. And then again, all the psychologists and stuff that want to charge you through the nose, but you keep coming every week for years, you know, turn you into an annuity payment, a constant income stream. Total bullshit, you know. But Dr. Vanderkolk, very, very, very good guy, and he has pushed the envelope forward quite a bit. So none of this is directed at him or many of the good workers in the mental health community. It's just, unfortunately, the institution as a whole is corrupt. Still does some good work, but is corrupt. Unfortunately, it is what it is. It's true. All right, that's all I had. Anything final, guys?
Not from me.
Okay.
No, it's good. Good show.
All right. So thank you, everyone, for watching. We hope you understand trauma more now. That, yeah, you probably have some, and it's probably screwing up your life to some degree, and it can be fixed. The majority of it, for most people, can be fixed very rapidly. You know, 80% of the people who come to me, 1 or 2 sessions, all their major stuff is fixed, and then they just take off. And I'd say 90% need 3, you know, another 10% need 3, and then another 10%, you know, might need 5, 6. One guy did 11. But again, this house, several hundred people. That's the most anyone's ever did. You know, so it's just that effective. And you can do it. You can even do it rewiring yourself. Do it yourself. You know, take the free program, take the training. A lot of people will need additional training and support to get the best benefit, but you can already benefit from the free program. You can do it. We just show you how to rewire your brain. The power is ultimately with you to fix yourself. You're the one doing the work. We are the guides. You can do it. You can up-level your life. You can get this trauma out of you because you truly do have more power than you know. That's our show. Thank you, guys.